Discover how one woman's incredible cabin built log by log changed a widower's life forever. Helen stood in the soft glow of the morning sun, her hands steady against the rough timber as she marked the place where the next log would rest. Each piece was more than just wood, it was a stitch in the tapestry of her heartbreak and hope. She could almost hear Bill's laughter, feel his guiding hand taking hers as they dreamed of building their own retreat in the woods. Now, one log at a time, she was transforming that dream into reality. With every swing of the hammer, she chased away the shadows of grief that had weighed her down. This wasn't just construction, it was therapy, a way to channel her love for Bill into something tangible. Her cabin rose higher, its logs stacked meticulously, a tribute, a promise, a balm for her aching heart. In the quiet of the quaint town, where whispers lingered like the gentle rustle of leaves, Helen found solace. The cabin slowly became a symbol of resilience, its walls echoing the dreams they once shared. Next door, Jack lived his own struggle. A war veteran with heavy shoulders and a heavier heart, he wandered through his days marked by reminders of pain. His clothes hung too loose, a shadow of the man he used to be. Watching Helen from his porch, he felt disconnected, a bystander in a world that seemed to move on without him. What's the point? He thought, seeing her future taking form while he battled losing his past. His life felt trivial compared to her determination. But there was something in the way she worked tirelessly, hammering away with determination that stirred a flicker of inspiration. She was a bright spot in the dullness of his unremarkable existence. He tried to ignore it, but her laughter, echoing across the yard, coaxed the corners of his lips into a reluctant smile. It was a small victory in a life filled with shadows. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the cabin neared completion, Helen planned a roof-raising celebration. But just as she prepared, Jack's world crumbled. The eviction notice clutched in his hand felt too heavy to ignore. Failed job applications echoed in his mind, each rejection another dagger. Seeing Helen outside, struggling against the pouring rain as she tried to lift a log alone, something snapped inside him. Remembering her hard work and resilience, he took a deep breath and stepped into the storm. "Need a hand?" he called out, hesitant but full of determination. Their eyes met, and for the first time, she saw beyond his worn exterior the pain, the loss, the yearning to belong. Together, they pushed and pulled, sharing their burdens in silence. But as their friendship blossomed, whispers curled around them like mist, fueled by community bias and misunderstanding. An incident with a neighbor sent everything spiraling. Helen faced the choice between standing up for Jack or succumbing to the judgment that wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Just when they started to build something real, an unexpected clash rattled their fragile connection. Would Helen's unwavering belief in Jack be enough to break the chains of judgment? As she stood caught between loyalty and fear, the dust from their lives swirled around them, leaving an open question: could love salvage brokenness in the harsh light of community scrutiny? The day of the roof-raising celebration dawned bright and clear. Helen, her heart racing with excitement, couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation. She had poured her soul into this cabin, and today it would be unveiled not just to the townsfolk, but to Jack too. She wanted him to see that their bond, formed in the storms of life, could be as strong as the cabin she'd built, yet underneath the surface of her joy lay a knot of anxiety. The whispers and judging eyes of their neighbors had not gone unnoticed. Helen recalled Mrs. Thompson's pointed remarks, the way she sneered when Helen and Jack worked side by side. What will they say? Helen thought, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Will they understand? Jack felt that pressure too. Despite his growing feelings for Helen, he found himself lurking at the edges of the yard, grappling with the heaviness in his chest. He arrived early, hesitant but determined to be part of this moment. Helen was like sunlight breaking through clouds. She made him want to fight the battles he'd been avoiding, but the fear of rejection lingered. What if they say something? What if I'm not enough? As guests arrived, chatter buzzed in the crisp air. Families gathered, children laughed, and the spirit of celebration ignited the clearing. But amidst the laughter, Jack could sense the glances directed his way, the whispers cloaked behind overly bright smiles. He stood at a distance, hands shoved deep into his pockets, feeling like an outsider crashing a party he didn't belong to. Helen's heart sank as she spotted him alone, watching from beneath the sprawling oak trees. She moved through the gathering, her mind racing. This is supposed to be a celebration, she thought, frustration building. Why should he feel like he doesn't belong? He's done so much for me. Taking a deep breath, Helen approached Jack. Hey, she said softly, standing close enough to share her warmth but keeping her voice low. You should be part of this. It's our project. Jack looked at her, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. But what about them? He gestured vaguely towards the guests. Do you really think they'll accept me? Helen stepped closer, determination in her eyes. You are more than what they think. You've helped me more than they could ever understand. This cabin is ours, Jack. Together. As the sun dipped lower, throwing golden rays over the gathering, she took his hand, squeezing it gently. The warmth of her grip lifted his spirits, but the apprehension still lingered. The first toast was raised, and the crowd cheered. Laughter erupted, and dogs barked in excitement. Helen felt buoyed by the energy around her and, still holding Jack's hand, led him towards the group. She could feel his tension through their clasped fingers but didn't let go. The cabin stood tall behind them, a testament to their labor and resilience. But just as they stepped closer to the heart of the celebration, Mrs. Thompson's voice pierced the air, sharp as a blade. What's he doing here? The laughter faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence, as all eyes turned to Jack. Helen's heart thudded violently in her chest. Would she stand up for him now, in front of everyone? Would she risk the stares and the implications? Jack's grip tightened around her hand, filled with uncertainty. In that moment, with the weight of the community's judgment hanging over them, Helen felt a swell of determination rise within her. He's here because he's part of this, she shouted, her voice clear and defiant. This cabin is built on hard work and friendship. And that includes Jack. The tension hung thick in the air, but Helen's heart raced in her chest. As people shifted uncomfortably, she faced them, her breath steady and strong. Would her words be enough to turn the tide and silence the whispers, or would the judgment only grow louder? The night was young, but uncertainty loomed large. In that moment, Helen understood, standing up was only the first step. Now, they both had to face the repercussions together. Would their budding connection withstand the storm, or would the judgment of the town tear them apart? The answer hung in the balance, waiting to be revealed. The silence felt heavy, as if the very air around them had thickened, forcing everyone to take a collective breath. Helen's heart raced. She could see the uncertainty in Jack's face, mixed with surprise and hope. But would the townsfolk accept them? Would they choose to see friendship instead of rumors? Mrs. Thompson's eyes burned with a mixture of contempt and smugness. Is that so? She snapped, her voice dripping with scorn. What a charming fairy tale we have here. But is he really worthy of your trust, Helen? The crowd shifted uncomfortably, and murmurs began to ripple through the group like the wind rustling the leaves. Helen refused to look away from Mrs. Thompson, drawing strength from the fire that burned inside her. It's not a fairy tale, Mrs. Thompson. It's real. Like this cabin. Like the work Jack and I did together. It's built on trust, resilience, and friendship. Jack's grip was still firm in hers, and she could feel the warmth of his palm anchoring her. She took a deep breath. Everyone's quick to judge what they don't understand, she continued, her voice steady. But I encourage you all to think about what it means to lift each other up rather than tear each other down. A few nods emerged in the crowd, accompanied by whispers of agreement, but Mrs. Thompson wasn't finished. And what will you do, Jack? If things get tough, do you really think you can stand by her side as a partner? You've ghosted us long enough. That last jab hit hard. Jack stiffened beside her, and Helen could sense his doubts start to creep in again. But before he could withdraw, she turned to him. You don't owe anyone an explanation, Jack. You have been a part of this journey since the beginning. You've built more than just a cabin, you've built a foundation of trust between us. His eyes locked with hers, and she saw a flicker of resilience ignite within him. A silent understanding passed between them, something deeper than the moment's tension. I'm not going anywhere, Jack said, his voice emerging firm and clear, rising above the murmurs. Helen is someone worth standing for. I may not have all the answers, but I know that we've built something together that I will always fight for. A gasp echoed from a few townsfolk. The courage in Jack's voice shifted the atmosphere, like a light breaking through clouds. Helen could see the discomfort on some faces, but also a glimmer of hope on others. Their bonds may have once been fractured, but in that moment, they were rebuilding. Maybe we should celebrate this cabin, then, Helen proposed, her heart filled with the warmth of newfound defiance. Let us not just celebrate the cabin itself but the community we can be if we choose to embrace one another. Slowly, hands began to rise, hesitant at first but soon caught in a wave of unity. A cheer broke through the heavy air, and the crowd erupted into applause. Helen's heart soared. It was just a moment, but it felt monumental. In the midst of it all, a tiny voice piped up from the gathering. Does that mean we can still roast marshmallows? Helen turned to see a little girl with smudged cheeks and wide eyes. Another ripple of laughter burst forth, easing the tension that had hung so heavily over them, but even amid the joy, Helen felt a flicker of fear flicker back to life. Yes, they'd taken a stand, but what would tomorrow bring? Would they be able to carry this brave act into the weeks ahead? As the sun fell behind the trees, casting long shadows across the clearing, Helen looked at Jack, their hands still intertwined, a symbol of unwavering support against the tide of judgment. Together they could face whatever storm lay ahead. But then, from the edge of the crowd, a familiar face emerged. And Helen's heart sank. It was someone she hadn't expected to see. Someone who could shift the balance completely. What would this unexpected visitor bring to their fragile moment? The unexpected figure moved closer, and Helen's heart sank further. It was Lisa, her childhood friend and the proud daughter of the town's most influential family. Helen had imagined many things to happen today, but not this. Lisa's sharp features were softened by an uneasy smile, yet the undercurrent of tension was unmistakable. Helen, Lisa said, her voice clear but tinged with uncertainty, I didn't expect to find you here. She looked over at Jack, assessing him with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Neither did I, Helen replied, pulling herself up tall, memories of their bond flashing through her mind. They'd shared giggles, dreams, and sketches of fairy tale cabins in school. But time and choices had twisted those dreams into a complicated history. What are you doing back in town? I came to visit my mom, Lisa said, shrugging lightly as if to dismiss the weight of absent years. I heard about the cabin you built and about him. She gestured at Jack. I wanted to see for myself. Tension crackled in the air as Lisa's gaze lingered on Jack before returning to Helen. There was no denying the shadow of doubt lurking in her expression. Helen's heart raced. This was the moment she had feared, a familiar face full of questions and an undeniable legacy that overshadowed her own fight for acceptance. Lisa, we've been through a lot, Helen defended, stepping forward slightly. Please understand that Jack is genuinely here for me. We've created something together against all odds. A flicker of surprise crossed Lisa's face. A friendship built on trust, you said. But can you really trust him? Jack's grip on Helen's hand tightened, the strength of his support flowing through her. He took a breath, steadying himself. I know the town has doubts about me, and that's fair. But what you see here is a new beginning. I don't want to be a ghost anymore. I want to be part of something real. The crowd was listening intently now, curiosity peaking as this unexpected confrontation unfolded. Helen caught the glint of interest in some eyes, while others stuck rigidly to skepticism. She could feel the electric energy shifting, and she realized it was time to step into the light. Look, Lisa, Helen said, her voice softening. I understand why you might doubt us. We were friends once, and I know that means something. But I'm asking you give Jack a chance. If you can't do it for him, do it for the community we grew up in, for the dreams we made as kids. A quiet spread through the gathering as Helen's words hung in the air. Lisa seemed to consider them, her brow furrowed, the conflict playing out across her features. For a moment, they stood locked in an exchange, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. Maybe Lisa began, but before she could continue, a loud voice interrupted from the back of the crowd. Why should we trust any of this? It was Mrs. Thompson again, seizing the moment. Just because Helen spun a nice story about trust and resilience. What proof do you have? Helen felt a fire ignite inside her. She was done playing defense. My proof is standing right beside me, she said, glancing at Jack, who was watching her with a mixture of admiration and concern. Together, we prove that building something worthwhile takes effort, heart, and yes, trust, and that's real. The crowd murmured, the tension brewing once more as Helen held her breath. Would they accept this new path she was forging with Jack? She stole a glance at Lisa, waiting for an answer, knowing that the time to rewrite their story was diminishing. But time seemed to freeze, making every heartbeat stretch. As Lisa opened her mouth to respond, the unmistakable sound of a car horn blared from the road. The crowd shifted anxiously, eyes darting, all of them turning towards the source of the noise. What came next could change everything for Helen, Jack, and their hopes of acceptance. The gravel crunched beneath tires, and there was no turning back now. Who had just arrived, and what impact would they have on this fragile moment? The crowd's eyes shifted in unison toward the road, anticipation buzzing like the electric current wrapping around Helen's heart. She could feel her own breaths quickening as the vehicle rolled into view, a sleek black SUV, clearly out of place in their small town. It came to a halt, dust swirling as the engine quieted. Helen's gut twisted. Who could it be? The figure behind the wheel opened the door, stepping out with a confident grace that instantly commanded attention. The newcomer was a man, tall and strikingly handsome, with dark hair and an air of authority that seemed almost too heavy for this gathering. Helen swallowed hard. Who is that? Murmured someone from the crowd, and she could feel their collective curiosity morphing into suspicion. Much like the way the sky shifts before a storm, the man scanned the crowd, his eyes piercing through the uncertainty. At last, they landed on Jack and Helen, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Relief? Helen couldn't decipher it. She stepped closer to Jack, feeling the warmth of his hand, grounding herself against this whirlwind of emotion. Hey, is that? Jack's whisper broke through the din, barely audible yet laden with disbelief. Helen nodded slowly, her heart racing. Yeah, that's Carter. He used to live here. We were well, not exactly friends. Lisa's brows furrowed as she processed this information. What is he doing back? I thought he left for good. As if responding to their hushed talk, Carter started striding toward them, confidence in every step. The crowd parted, some murmurs rising up like waves lapping at the shore. Helen could sense the tension leaking back into the air. Excuse me, he said, voice bright yet cutting through the noise like a knife. I need to speak with Helen. Helen felt the eyes of the crowd turn to her for reassurance, and suddenly, that familiar sense of fear gripped her throat. She had spent so long trying to carve her own path, to redefine her story. But standing here with Carter at the center of it all, she felt the pieces of her past colliding with her present. I guess she hesitated, waiting for him to fill the gap. Carter. You remember? His smile held an edge of warmth, yet there was a shadow deep in his eyes. 1,000 memories threatened to drown her, but she held firm. Yeah, I remember. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. I came to see you, to find out what you've built. To see if your dream was real. Behind him, whispers fluttered through the crowd: curiosity, disbelief, even jealousy. Helen could feel Jack's hand tighten around hers, but now she saw something different in his eyes. It was a spark of uncertainty as Carter's presence stirred unaddressed tension among them. Why now? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Why after so long? Carter hesitated, his gaze gliding over Jack, then back to Helen. Because I need you to know that I'm here to support you. I heard about what happened, about the cabin. Support? The word tasted bitter on her tongue. You couldn't stand by when it mattered before. I know, he began, his voice softer, almost pleading, and I was wrong. I should have been there. But I'm here now. A ripple of uncertainty ran through the crowd like a breeze before a downpour. Jack shifted beside her, clenching his jaw. Helen fought the tidal wave of emotions swirling inside her. Could she accept help from someone who had abandoned her? Could she trust Carter's sudden return? Leave, she finally said, keeping her voice firm despite the tremor beneath it. You're part of the past, and I'm not ready to relive it. Carter's expression changed, a flicker of hurt crossing his features. Helen, please. But before he could finish, Mrs. Thompson interjected loudly, ever the voice of the town. This isn't about the past. It's about the future, and we deserve clarity. What do you want, Carter? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun, and every heartbeat felt like an unsaid confession. This moment, this confrontation was more than just about Helen and Jack's future, it was about the entire town's faith in their story. As the crowd leaned in for what would surely be the answer that could tip the balance, Helen felt the gravity of choices pressing down on her. Answers loomed on the horizon, ready to shift her world anew. What came next could rip everything apart or build it anew. Could she really face the truth waiting on her doorstep? Carter swallowed hard, the weight of Mrs. Thompson's question hanging thick in the air. He glanced around, from the faces of curious onlookers to the growing tension between him, Jack, and Helen. It was as if she had just thrown down a gauntlet, challenging him to lay his cards on the table. What do I want? He echoed, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his gray eyes. I want to understand what went wrong, what I lost, and if there's any chance for redemption. The crowd murmured, a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Helen felt Jack's grip tighten around her hand, a silent warning against what was about to unfold. She couldn't deny the emotions swirling inside her. No, it was more than that. They were clashing, battling for control over her spirit. So you expect us to just let you back in? Just like that? Jack's voice was sharp, laced with protectiveness. You think saying you're here to support is enough? You left her when she needed you most. Carter turned to Jack, his jaw clenched but his eyes didn't waver. I know it wasn't fair, and I can't change the past. But what I can do is help her now. I want to be part of her future if she'll allow it. Ignoring the unsettled feeling deep within, Helen took a hesitant step forward. Part of my future? What does that even mean? Last time I checked, you packed your bags and left town without even saying goodbye. A murmur rippled through the crowd, and the air seemed to grow thicker as they absorbed her words. She could feel the energy shift, the weight of unspoken thoughts and feelings pressing against her. It was almost suffocating, a tension that mirrored her own internal struggle. I wasn't ready, Carter admitted, his voice a low whisper, yet somehow it carried across the now silent crowd. I left because I thought it was for the best, for both of us. But I was wrong. I never stopped caring about you, Helen. I can't walk back into your life and expect forgiveness, but I can offer my help, even if it's just as a friend. Friend? The word slipped from her lips, a taut, bitter sound. You think we can just go back to being friends? After everything? Maybe that's what you need right now, someone to help build what you've started with the cabin. I can bring resources, tools, whatever it takes to make this dream of yours a reality. It felt like trying to breathe underwater. Everything was so heavy, so entangled. The very idea of working beside him again sent her thoughts spinning. Hadn't she fought too hard to reclaim her independence? What if I don't want that? What if I want to finish this alone? Carter's expression faltered but then softened, almost as if the sheer force of her honesty struck something deep within him. Then I want to force myself into your life. I just came back to let you know I'm here if you want me. The crowd began to chatter again, weighing the moment like judges in a court of law. Helen could sense the weight of anxious eyes boring into her. She was torn, standing at the precipice of so many feelings: fear, hope, anger, and something else she dared not name. Why should I trust you now? She murmured, her voice low, barely audible, not just to Carter but to herself. Before he could respond, a sudden commotion broke through the crowd. A figure burst forward, nearly stumbling into Helen's space. It was her brother, Ethan, line of worry etched across his forehead. Helen. You need to come. There's news about the cabin. She turned, bewildered and heart racing. The moment hung tantalizingly, the answer to her future dangling like tendrils in the wind. Whatever was coming next might redefine what she thought she could handle, who she wanted to be. What news awaited her? And could it change everything she thought she knew about herself, about Carter, and the path she had chosen? Helen's heart raced as she pulled away from the tense standoff with Carter and turned her full attention to Ethan, who was clearly agitated. His face was pale, as though he had just run a marathon to reach her. What happened? She asked, urgency creeping into her voice. It's about the cabin, he huffed, his breath ragged. I think you need to see this for yourself. Just come with me. The crowd shimmered around them as she exchanged glances with Jack, who tightened his grip, still holding her hand. Wait, what about? Ethan shook his head insistently. This can't wait. Please. The look in his eyes brooked no argument. Part of her wanted to stay and hash things out with Carter and Jack, but another part, perhaps the more instinctive, desperate part, pulled her along. Okay, she finally relented, squeezing Jack's hand reassuringly before letting go. I'll be right back. Ethan led her through the crowd and into the wooded path that wound toward where her cabin stood. Memories flooded back, reminding her of all the hard work she had put into building her sanctuary from the ground up. Yet as they walked, she couldn't suppress the gnawing worry that had tightened in her chest. What could possibly be wrong? I swear, Helen, you're going to want to see this, Ethan said, glancing over his shoulder at her, his expression serious. She matched his intensity with her own concern, her mind racing. When they arrived at the clearing, the sight that met her breathless anticipation brought her crashing down. A group of men stood around the cabin, their expressions serious as they assessed the structural damage. Walls cracked, debris scattered. She felt her gut drop. What happened? She gasped, her heart sinking as she took in the ruined wood and disarray. One of the storms wrecked half the roof. It's worse than we thought, Ethan explained, his voice low. They say it might have to be completely rebuilt. I wanted to get you here before any decisions were made. Staring at the chaos, her mind raced, and her pulse quickened. This wasn't just a setback, it felt catastrophic. All those hours dedicated to building her own little haven were crumbling before her. No, no. It can't be. She took a shaky breath, trying to ground herself. As if sensing her turmoil, Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I know it's hard, but we can fix it together. You're not alone in this. The reality of the situation twisted like a knife in her stomach. Just when she thought she had turned the corner, the universe had other plans. That whirlwind of emotions she thought she had pushed aside was back with a vengeance. Perhaps Carter could help, Ethan suggested cautiously, deliberately, looking back towards the direction they had come from. He's got connections and resources. It might be worth considering. The idea flooded her with conflicting emotions, a mix of gratitude for help and dread at the thought of engaging with Carter again. How could she even think about trusting him, especially now? I don't know. Her voice trembled slightly, revealing more than she intended. A rustle from behind caught her attention, and she turned to see Carter approaching, apprehensive but determined. He locked eyes with her, a question etched on his face. I heard what happened. I can help. I want to be part of this. Helen felt the air go electric. She stood at a crossroads, and the weight of the decision settled heavily on her shoulders. Looking between Ethan and Carter, both of whom wanted to support her but for different reasons, she couldn't escape the feeling that everything was shifting. Can you really be trusted, Carter? She challenged, the weight of her past lingering painfully in her heart. Before he could answer, a thunderclap echoed overhead, almost as if nature was punctuating her dilemma. The clouds above began to darken, mirroring the storm within her. What if she took a chance, just this once? Would she find the strength to embrace this new chapter, or would it all just break her again? Tell me, Carter, she whispered, barely able to contain her emotions, what's your real reason for being here? As the storm brewed overhead, the underlying tempest in their lives drew closer to an explosive climax. Would they be able to work together to rebuild not just the cabin but also their fragile connection? The answer danced on the edge of her thoughts, hauntingly unresolved. Ethan stepped closer, a shield of calm and certainty around him. Helen, he said softly, this is about you. You've built something incredible here, something that means the world to you. Don't let the past hold you back from moving forward. But Helen's eyes remained locked on Carter, searching for sincerity in his expression. The storm gathering above them seemed to echo the brewing turmoil inside her. She wanted to reach for the safety of the familiar, yet the idea of letting go through trust was terrifying. Carter broke the silence. I've made mistakes. I get that. But I swear I can help you fix this. I want to make things right, not just with the cabin but with us. The storm clouds rolled in harder, their rumblings almost drowning out his words. Helen's heart felt like it was caught in a tempest of its own. Memories of past arguments, harsh words flung like arrows, and moments of vulnerability rushed back to her. How could she so easily forget the pain he had caused? Yet there was also a spark of something else, hope, maybe. The prospect of rebuilding not just her cabin, but a kind of connection they hadn't had in years. She took a deep breath and weighed her options. Could she dare to be vulnerable once more? The heavy air enveloped them all as she finally spoke. If we do this, if I even consider it, it has to be different this time. I can't afford to go back to how things were. Carter nodded, understanding sinking into his expression. I promise you, Helen. I'm not that man anymore. Just then, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, sending loose leaves swirling around them. It felt as if nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. All right, she said, her voice steadying as determination washed over her. If we're going to move forward, we do it together. I need your commitment, your whole heart. No backing out. Carter stepped forward, his gaze intense. You have my word. Every step of the way, I'll be there. But I need to know, do you want me to be a part of this? Helen felt the weight of her own uncertainty. Would she be able to trust him? But the thought of the cabin, her little sanctuary, torn and smashed, triggered a surge of defiance. Yes. I want you to be here. Let us start fixing this. The landscape shifted slightly around them, the threat of rain in the air suddenly feeling less ominous. Helen nodded to Ethan, who smiled with relief. Let us do this, he urged, clapping a hand on Carter's shoulder, further cementing their fragile alliance. With hesitant but determined steps, the three moved closer to the cabin. Each crack and dent in the wood felt like a metaphor for the cracks in their own relationships, yet there was a flicker of hope nestled in the destruction. As they assessed the work that lay ahead, Helen couldn't shake the feeling that the rebuilding of this cabin would mean more than just wood and nails. It would require trust, hard conversations, and the rebuilding of something she once thought was lost forever. "I know it's going to be hard," Ethan said, breaking the silence with honesty. "But we'll figure it out together, right? One day at a time." Looking up at the darkening sky, Helen felt the first drops of rain start to fall. She moved them back toward the shelter of the trees, but the sense of inevitability washed over her. They would need to face both the storm without and the storm within. Suddenly, Carter's phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him away from the moment. As he fished it out, his expression shifted. "I have to take this," he said quickly, stepping a few paces away. Helen watched him go, her heart pounding. What if this call held more than just a simple message? The winds picked up, tossing hair in her face as she turned to Ethan. What if he changes his mind? What if he is not really committed? Ethan met her gaze, his eyes steady. "You've got to trust that he is here for you now. Whatever comes next, you face it together. Don't let fear be the only voice guiding you." As the rain began to pour, Helen stood on the brink of a decision, torn between hope and lingering doubt. Whatever happened next, she realized she was standing at the beginning of something big. And it scared her, but just as she felt the weight of uncertainty begin to lift, a flash of lightning illuminated the forest, revealing shadows that threatened to unravel them all. Would the storm hold back their progress or unleash everything they were meant to rebuild? The rain began as a light drizzle, but soon transformed into a wild downpour, soaking the ground and sending torrents crashing against the underbrush. Helen felt the first few drops hit her cheeks like tiny shards of ice. With each passing second, the moment stretched as she watched Carter pace a few feet away, phone glued to his ear, his back turned to her and Ethan. "Come on, Carter," she muttered under her breath. Everything felt heavy: the cabin, her memories, and the sky above. Each raindrop seemed like a firm invitation to turn back, retreat into the safety of old habits, where vulnerability hadn't clouded her judgment that a crack of thunder rumbled. It shook the earth beneath Helen's feet and echoed the turmoil within her. This was supposed to be a fresh start, but she'd never felt more frozen, caught between the past she wanted to flee and the future that felt too uncertain to embrace. Ethan stepped closer, shielding Helen from the rain with his sturdy frame. "You all right?" he asked, his voice firm yet gentle, like a lifeline. "No," she admitted, shaking her head. "I don't know, Ethan. I don't know if I can do this. What if history repeats itself? What if I let him back in and he hurts me again?" "He is trying to change, Helen," Ethan said, glancing toward Carter, who was nodding, his voice low and earnest on the phone. "But more importantly, are you ready to change? To let someone in again?" Her heart clenched at the thought. Did she even know how to open herself up again after everything? The thought of reopening those wounds brought tears to her eyes, but she blinked them away. She needed clarity. She needed courage. Suddenly, Carter ended the call and turned back to them, his face etched with concern. "Sorry about that. It was my mom. She just wanted to check in with me." Helen noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, something that disarmed her frustration. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Yeah, just family stuff. You know how it is," he replied, running a hand through his drenched hair, his expression betraying a mix of weariness and longing, and in that moment, she saw it. The man who stood before her had changed. He wasn't the same person from before. Somehow, he looked more vulnerable than ever, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "I want to be here with you, Helen. I want to help rebuild not just the cabin, but whatever we had." Helen's breath caught in her throat. He was standing there, offering her a piece of himself she thought she'd lost forever, a sense of hope and reconnection. Was he truly ready for this? And was she? With stomach knots of anxiety, she stepped forward, feeling an urge to reach out, to connect. "I need you to understand this isn't just about the cabin. It's about us. And I'm scared." "I am too," Carter said, closing the gap. "But isn't that what makes it worth it? The risk?" Caught in the electric moment, surrounded by the storm, she felt a rush of something passion, maybe. Or defiance. All right. Let us start small. We renovate the cabin. But you need to prove to me you're truly committed. Deal, he said, his smile flickering like lightning. One step at a time, right? A moment of silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the rain's rhythm. It felt like the world had narrowed down to just the three of them, Ethan, Carter, and Helen, standing under the storm, soaking wet but somehow lighter. But as the rain poured down, a familiar sensation crept back into Helen's mind, like a dark shadow curling at the edges of her heart. What if this was just a facade? The storm wasn't just out there, it was here, and it was real. Just as they began to brainstorm how to tackle the work ahead, another flash of lightning illuminated the forest, and at that moment, a far-off sound echoed in the distance. Was it thunder? No. It sounded like a truck, breaking through the isolation of the woods. Who could that be? Ethan asked, concern etched on his face. Helen's heart raced. I don't know, but we should check it out. This storm, it feels like a change is coming. As they moved towards the sound, something deep within her stirred. Had she truly prepared for the unexpected, or was she inviting in a challenge that would test everything she stood for? The urgency in the air built, and Helen realized she needed to face whatever came next, head on. What awaited them as they ventured further into the storm? The wind howled like a banshee as Helen, Jack, and Ethan broke through the tree line, emerging from the shelter of the forest. The storm raged around them, but all three were focused on the ominous rumble that seemed to grow louder with each passing moment. Underneath it all was a sense of urgency. Something was about to change. That truck's arrival wasn't just a random occurrence, it felt like a turning point. Stay close, Jack said, his eyes darting around the clearing for signs of trouble. Helen nodded, clutching onto Ethan's arm, each heartbeat echoing the tremors around them. Carter trailed slightly behind, his brow furrowed with determination and concern as the wind whipped at his hair. The scene around them felt charged with possibilities, teetering on the edge of a cliff. As they approached the gravel road, the headlights of the truck pierced through the gloom, casting elongated shadows that flickered eerily across the landscape. The vehicle lurched to a stop, tires crunching on the stones. In rapid succession, the doors swung open, and out stepped figures that made Helen's heart drop. Mom! She blurted out in disbelief. Her mother stood there, drenched but resolute, alongside her father, who looked equally bewildered, yet determined. We heard about the storm and came to help, her mom explained, shaking rainwater from her hair. And we got wind of everything that's been happening, the cabin, the town, everything. Dad, how did you know? Helen stammered, the weight of the reunion colliding with the whirlwind of emotion inside her. She could feel the cracks in her wall begin to show as her parents came closer, enveloping her in a warm embrace. We're here for you, her father said, squeezing her shoulder. Now and always. And just like that, the knot in her chest began to unravel. In their presence, there was a flood of love, a wave that washed over her fears, threatening to dissolve the walls she had so carefully built around herself. What is going on with the cabin? He asked, concern replacing the warmth in his eyes. It's been complicated, Helen admitted, her voice trembling slightly as she gestured toward the wreckage in the distance. It got damaged in the storm, and I've been trying to hold everything together. With Carter, her mother gently corrected. Yes, Carter. He's back, and we're trying to figure things out. She didn't know if it was regret or excitement that colored her tone, but she realized it was the truth. The reunion with her parents propelled her forward, dragging the remnants of her past into the light. As she spoke, she noticed Jack lingering, his expression unreadable but tinged with a hint of disappointment. She remembered the moments they shared, just two broken souls trying to forge a path through the darkness, both reclaiming pieces of their lives. But now, with her parents back, the bonds felt tangled once again. Jack, hey! She called out, and he turned, a small smile lighting up his face. Helen's heart ached for the friendship they had built, and she willed him to see how important he was. This is my family, just like you are now. We are in this together. All of us, don't you see? Finally, he stepped forward, and she felt his support surge once again, like a gentle tide that refused to recede. We all need each other, especially when things get tough. He turned his attention toward Carter, gauging his presence. And if we're going to rebuild this cabin, we need everyone on board. I totally agree, Carter said, stepping forward with sincerity. We'll work together. All of us. The storm may have thrown them all into chaos, but here, in this moment, beneath the swirling clouds, hope blossomed anew. As Helen glanced at her parents, at Jack, and then Carter, she felt the power of community sink deep. Okay, let us do this together, she said, determination lining her voice, and just like that, a collective cheer echoed in the stormy night, cutting through the uncertainty that had weighed on her for so long. Slowly, they began to strategize, each person voicing ideas as the rain fell like a soft rhythm around them. Jack proposed rebuilding the roof first, while her father shared thoughts on securing the structure. Helen felt a spark of excitement swell within her as she listened to the plans unfold. In that whirlwind of weather and encouragement, laughter and teamwork bridged the gaps between broken hearts. This was a fresh start, a chance for each person involved to write a new chapter, full of support and resilience. Tomorrow, we'll start bright and early, Helen announced. But for now, let us huddle together, no more running away. With that, they formed a close-knit ring, hand in hand against the storm, pulsing with renewed energy and a sense of family, the very essence of what she had longed for in both her cabin and in life. The storm raged outside, but inside, hope breathed life into their hearts. And from that chaos, they would not falter again. Join me. Be part of the journey, Helen thought, as she breathed in the moment. With fists raised, she felt the swell of possibility rise within her. Let us turn this cabin into a home. The journey had only just begun, and she was ready to embrace every moment of it. You need to subscribe now to keep following these uplifting stories and transformations. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to help me beat the algorithm. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this new beginning. And don't wait not even one more second. Share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to hear this incredible tale of hope and renewal.